I mean, so many people are starting to also have the desire to uncover these memories. If you even think about like 10 years ago, people didn't want to even talk about this stuff. A lot of people didn't. And now it's becoming mainstream and people are so thirsty for knowledge. I mean, we just want to know the truth because it seems like we've been lied to, and we have been, and it's becoming so obvious. So we just want to find out everything now.
Welcome to New Earth Podcast, where we dive into inspiring stories, profound wisdom, and insights from remarkable individuals who are driving the consciousness shift on our planet. If you're ready to elevate your awareness and well-being, you're in the right place. But before we dive into today's episode, be sure to hit that subscribe button and join our growing community. Together, we'll continue to explore the ideas and conversations that help you up-level your consciousness. Thank you so much for your support and your comments and for being part of this journey. Hello and welcome back to my channel. Today, I'm absolutely thrilled to welcome Sarah Breskman Cosme, best-selling author, master hypnosis and leading voice in metaphysical exploration. Known for her work with Dolores Cannon's hypnosis technique, Sarah is dedicated to uncovering hidden truths deep within consciousness, and through her books, she invites us to explore ancient wisdom, collective healing, and the hidden truths of our past, shedding light on the mysteries of our existence. Welcome, Sarah. So delighted to have you here today.
Thanks so much for inviting me.
I've just been so moved reading your beautiful latest book about Avalon. And I have a deep connection with Avalon myself, actually. Well, I come from that area, so that whole area resonates so deeply. Some of the stories within it, it felt like a remembering. Is that something you've heard from other people as well?
Yes, I mean, I don't write these books. I'm just transcribing them. It's like there's a orchestrated consciousness as if the information has its own consciousness. So I'm just transcribing them and figuring out where they fit. But I know that these books are written so that people don't have to remember themselves. Like they're written as sort of like a tool for people where they can actually uncover these memories without having to experience the regressions themselves.
And can you just talk us through a little bit of how you use the hypnosis to help tap into these ancient memories?
Sure. So I basically use Dolores Cannon's method, and I bring my clients to the very deepest level of trance. And then I access their higher consciousness. And it's in that way I can find out anything. Like I can find out things about like who they really are, like their true purpose, and they can even heal themselves. Like really, there's so much within everyone. And when I just take anyone to that deep level, it's the same place as you would find in anyone. So you're actually just accessing universal consciousness. It's almost like when people access the Akashic records, but you're doing it within a person.
It's quite incredible, the information that comes through and is uncovered. Do you feel there's any coincidence that it's now that so much of this kind of hidden information is being brought to light?
No, I don't feel like there's any coincidence. I feel like it's important. And I think I think everyone that's alive right now, in some way, they know that they are here for the ascension process. Like everybody is here, fulfilling a role. And it's time that this information resurfaces. Because if you look throughout our history, you know, we couldn't talk about these things for so long. And now, all of a sudden, with with the help of the internet, actually, with help of the internet, we are just becoming an unstoppable force. The rate at which people are becoming aware of these things is incredible. And you really just can't stop the avalanche. So I feel like this is the time. We knew it would be the time. And this is when all these people are back again to do this, to uncover this. I mean, so many people are starting to also have the desire to uncover these memories. If you even think about like 10 years ago, people didn't want to, even talk about this stuff. A lot of people didn't. And now it's becoming mainstream and people are so thirsty for knowledge. I mean, we just want to know the truth because it seems like we've been lied to, and we have been, and it's becoming so obvious. So we just want to find out everything now.
And it's one of the themes in the book, isn't it? Very much how the Templars in particular were given the task of hiding the treasures so that they didn't get lost. Can you talk a little bit about that?
Yes, it was so interesting. I never really knew about the Templars, and I really hadn't had clients that had a session where they were a Templar before I was working on this book. And just like everything is brought to me while I'm working on these books, it's really interesting. um, I had a client that basically picked up part of the story I was working on, and she remembered working with the Knights Templars. So the Templars approached her. She's remembering a past life it was probably like, I don't know, maybe the 1600s or something like that. And the Templars approached her crew because she was working on boats at the time and just transporting goods and things like that. And the Templars recognized that they were good people. And so they asked them if they could work for them and start transporting their artifacts. And they also taught them all these different things. And it was fascinating because I didn't have any idea that the Templars were responsible for safeguarding all these artifacts. Anything that I, put in my books, I'm new to all this stuff because I don't research other people's information. So it comes to me in this way. And so really it's because we should really be so thankful because a lot of the artifacts that we do have safeguarded are totally because of them. And they understood a lot of amazing practices, and they shared with my client in her past life. She remembered them teaching her all about these different practices in order to receive more messages. Like they would stand outside and put their feet in the water while the moon was coming up and the sun was going down. And they understood these ancient ways that have been in our ancient societies and traveled through many people and hidden for so long, that it's the in-between times that are so powerful. Like the number 13 is such a powerful number. The in-between times, like the in-between day and night. Um, those times, the in-betweens are so incredibly powerful, and they understood that and to harness those times. So they would put their feet in the water, and when it was that in-between time, they knew that they would be more open to receiving messages from their team, from their higher self. And it was one of the ways that they kept this deep connection. They also understood fully how to ground with Mother Earth, and they showed, these people like how to ground in a way that I had never heard of before. It was like to sit cross-legged. So your feet are touching and then to put your hands on the earth. And, my client whose memories that what she was recounting under hypnosis, she remembered like she could almost feel the heartbeat of the earth. It was really fascinating. And so not only did the Templars safeguard artifacts, they safeguarded a lot of the ancient ways, and they kept those traditions and secret teachings and taught the people that were amongst them.
And from reading your books, we can start to integrate those old ancient practices and make them alive in us as well, because they're already in our DNA probably, but it's just that that remembering and actually embodying them again. And you also talk about the practices of the women of Avalon, and that was really incredible. And it's interesting with Avalon because it's often thought of as a myth or a legend, but the information that's been coming through your clients has been far from that.
Yeah, it really seems like it was not a myth at all. And there's so many realms that people consider Avalon too, which is really interesting. It seems like there is a complete, like, physical reality that's in a different realm that's close, very close to our realm. And that's where that's like what people call the fairy realm. There's like, different creatures that you wouldn't quite see here, but people kind of know about them because they have sort of seen them or they've come through, sometimes like, all the fairy creatures and elves and all these creatures that seem to be real. They're just not in our dimension. And then there seems to be this place in the UK where this group of women actually took it upon themselves to start safeguard a lot of these ancient teachings, but not just ancient teachings. They safeguarded the divine feminine, basically. So the divine feminine or women have been just suppressed for thousands and thousands of years. I mean, the truth is that women even think differently. Our mindset has been basically taken over, oppressed, and controlled for a long time. And so these women really helped safeguard a lot of this ancient wisdom, this knowledge, this is the truth about the divine feminine. And it's really because of them that we still have a lot of these teachings because it was so wiped out in most of the rest of the world. They even worked with the Templars, which I found shocking. I didn't know this, that some of the Templars would hide certain artifacts on this island where they were. So it seems like there was one particular island that was covered in mists, is what my clients remember. So it was completely shrouded in mists, and the tides had to come up a certain way for you to even be able to access this island. And they just couldn't do their practices like in a forest or anything like that because people could find them. It wasn't safe. But on this island, they were safe and they were able to do, these practices and keep the ancient traditions and ways. And they would set up like grid systems and, they understood how to work with the earth, how to work with even like the fairy realm and things like that.
I loved reading about all the different realms of Avalon, the different layers, because certainly, even my experience of Glastonbury, it really does meet you where you're at. So it can be a very difficult place to live because it really brings up, I know we're all going through that anyway, but Glastonbury more than anywhere, it does bring to the surface any traumas, anything that needs to be processed. The person in your story that kind of moved me the most with the wisdom that she brought through from Avalon was Alice. Can you speak about Alice?
Yes. Oh my gosh. So Alice was a past life of this woman named Christy, and Christy has become a really good friend now. So I met Christy by accident. I met her, she was watching just a video, or she was just watching her, stuff on her phone, and an interview popped up of me talking with an interviewer, and she thought that she knew me. And so when she listened to the interview, she realized she didn't know me, but I was talking about this other woman named Christy who had this brain condition. And when I was talking about that, the current Christy thought, oh my gosh, I have like a very similar brain condition. And then when I was talking to this interviewer about this other Christy and her memories of Atlantis, the current Christy thought, that's crazy. I've had these same, memories. At the time, at this time, and this is years ago now, Christy didn't really, she wasn't into this stuff. Like she had dabbled with, like she was interested in some philosophy. She had been interested in some history, but it wasn't the same history. But she just wasn't into this stuff. So um she was more into like health and fitness. So she wanted to like find out who I was and just how this could be such a coincidence because I'm talking about a Christy with the same brain condition who has the same memory. So anyway, she tried to get a hold of me, but I'm fully booked. I don't have any sessions available for years, actually. So she thought, oh, well, it looks like I have a workshop. And I do. I offer workshops now, which are magical. And so she thought about coming to my workshop, but she didn't know me at all. So she thought, this is kind of crazy if I booked a workshop without knowing this person. So she decided to think about it and she went into her garden. And in her garden, she saw these two jugs sticking up in her garden. Like she had gardened many times. So it was like magical. And her mom and helped her. And I met her mom, so sweet. And they counted, it was the same amount as my workshop. So she booked
Oh,
the
wow.
workshop right away. And it like magically appeared in her garden. So she booked my workshop and she thought, she wasn't feeling very well because she was having issues with this brain condition. So she wanted to reach out to me to see if she could come in before the workshop because she was having some health issues. And of course, I don't have any sessions available, but she picked this one date and I thought, oh, I have a session that day. I'm so sorry. And I emailed that back to her. Right when I emailed her back, the person that had that session that day canceled
Wow.
that at that moment.
Yeah.
So I thought, oh, maybe that's a sign usually. So I told Christy, it was like, well, you'll never believe this because right when I emailed you, the other person canceled. I didn't know anything about what was going on with Christy finding all this money or anything. So um, she had the session. She comes into the session, and then our first session, she remembers being this woman named Alice and living in the Middle Ages and you know, I still didn't think anything of it because I really hear amazing stories all the time. But what definitely clued me in was when I asked to speak directly with her higher self, her soul or the part of her that knows everything. They told me she was my next client and they told me things that I had been working on with a previous client that no one could have known. So I knew then, and I thought, okay. So then, that's essentially the story of how we started working
How
together.
amazing.
But now we're really good
So,
friends.
and that's something that was kind of talked about in the book as well, these kind of like leaving clues for ourselves. So obviously that was going on big time there.
Well, yeah, I don't, because I wouldn't have believed it. I wouldn't, it had to be something that would prove it to me. I don't go and search for the book ever. I let it come to me and I let it happen in this way. And I feel like I just have to keep it that way because so I don't know what I will be writing about next until it happens.
What a beautiful process that you're going through, and it feels like you've done this in many lifetimes as well.
That's what they say. They say I have like a book in Oxford that's like behind a wall. And it seems like I've done this many times, many lifetimes. I mean, I love doing it. So it kind of would make sense. And that's why I'm so passionate about it.
So I'd love to return to the story of Alice because that was probably what moved me the most about the whole book was her story. And it's very much talked about the suppression of women during that time period and how she and particularly her mother were very connected with nature, with magic, but they had to keep that hidden. And it was kind of being knocked out of her in the world that she lived in the bloodline that she lived in. And this kind of two worlds really that she lived in.
Yeah, it was so fascinating that throughout her mother's like lineage, they had certain abilities and a deep connection with like nature, with fairies, but they could not talk about it at all. I mean, they could be murdered, they could be tried, for heresy. And, um, Alice's mother like shared lots of information with her. Like she told her, to go outside under the moonlight and sing and dance. And, those are ancient practices that many other cultures have still. They do the dancing with the hip shaking. It's incredibly a powerful, like divine feminine practice that we've just really forgotten what I'm glad it's making a comeback now. But all these things, like it was really interesting that they had all these different teachings and practices and they understood like how to use herbs from the forest and different things like that. And even when I was working on my first book, A Hypnotist Journey to Atlantis, and I was learning about the ancient times in Lemuria, it was it was the same. Like they had these ancient practices. They understood that, the women actually carried sacred knowledge. They were able to tune in to the plants a lot easier than men, and they didn't even have to teach their daughters this subconscious information, which was really quite fascinating.
We all have this in our subconscious, in our DNA, as is being proved by what's coming from people's subconscious, their memories with working with you. So it really is a time of remembering.
It really is a time of remembering. It's a time of reclaiming too. Like it's almost like the way evolution works is that, and this is just the way it works. And it's, you would think it would be unfortunate, but it's the design of the ascension process where and even when you think about your own life, there's some sort of a collapse before there's a regrowth. It's just like the fire wipes out the forest before there's a new forest. So it's like the suppression of women happened for so long to reclaim it in a way where it balances itself out with the divine masculine. Like it has to be this way for this ascension process. And it's almost like we could never appreciate like our true power if we didn't lose it. I've had clients who under hypnosis, they find out they've been a healer before and it came so easy to them, but in this life they made it harder because then they'll appreciate this innate healing ability within themselves. It's things like that, and that's just how it works. It's like how we all separate from each other. This is basically in the symbol of the four corners, and that's actually a very sacred symbol. And one of the meanings is that we all separate to come back into the circle and join up again, um, but greater this time. So it's this process of evolution, which it's very hard to go through it. It's really hard to experience a collapse, but there's always a greater purpose for all of this. And, you know, I could only understand that fully from talking to the higher consciousness who looks at these things from a higher perspective. Because from my reality here, it's really difficult. The whole suppression of women, the whole like forgetting, I'm powerful, forgetting that my body can do all these crazy, amazing things. Like, I didn't know that. And it creates this like feeling of like, wow, I don't want like anyone in my way anymore, like to suppress this from anyone. But it seems like this is just where we are and the time period we're in.
And that's something that I really get from your book is, like take for example Alice's story. it's her personal story, but it taps in so deeply with our collective story, about the suppression of women, and then other aspects as well, like that kind of sense of how powerful we are. At one point she goes into the wood, and I think it was laughter that brought her to a stone circle, and she
Yeah.
she entered a portal and went into a completely other dimension where she connected with these beings. And I think we are rediscovering that we all have these abilities. It's reconnecting with that. But the question I wanted to ask you was that story where she goes through that portal and connects with other beings. It was a lover. It was a lover she connected with, and then got separated from, and that really resonated deeply in my own being, and some grief came into me. So that it was that potential through your work to and through the reading and connecting with it to heal some old woundings and collective traumas, whether it was my personal story or just that collective separation from love, or whatever that was. It feels incredibly powerful.
It's one of the reasons why a lot of people that have had other lives, like Alice's, have a hard time with relationships these days because they do remember divine love, which is different, where each person like meets each other in a different way, which is pretty absent a lot of the times in our society. And it's also, when I was listening to, Christy under hypnosis recount her memories as Alice, women were slaves. They weren't, in any way, they didn't have any power, like, which was really also a great reminder as how far we've come because they literally were slaves. Like she was basically raped at 12 when she was married off, not even developed yet, but she was just married off, and that was typical in that time. And they didn't even have any possessions if their husbands decided to take them, from them. And it's like that whole type of relationship is so different. And then even where we are now, it's still kind of different than being equal partners.
And it was interesting because I think that was, between the two worlds, the brutality of the relationship with her husband in the world she was living in, and then going through that
Yeah.
portal, the divine nature of it. It really brought that painfulness of, that the contrast really to light, which for me was incredibly moving and powerful.
Mhm. Yeah, it was for me too. I mean, and for Christy, like, because it answered a lot of questions she had had all her life, like why relationships were hard for her. And then, it's like she still thinks about that divine love because nothing ever really comes close to it. So I think, and it's a great loss to not have it when you know what it's like and like there's a counterpart out there for you.
Really, really powerful stuff. And that divine feminine, masculine feminine union is very much, because of the suppression of the divine feminine there and all the kind of distortions and imbalances that have risen out of that. It's very much that, how can we find our way back to ourselves and back to each other? It feels like the time for that, and back
It's
to
really,
love.
it is come back to love, but what's interesting is like through the higher self, it's not going to come unless we do that inner work where we really become fully honest with who we really are and like work on ourselves. Because there is a truth to saying the outer world is a reflection of our inner world. And it's like there is a lot of issues that women are starting. not only with these memories resurfacing, these memories are resurfacing, but collective trauma is resurfacing to be released, to be like healed, to flow out of us, not to stay within our bodies, but to flow out. Like, you know, what I thought was so interesting is how it relates to menopause, actually, which is something I never thought about. I haven't gone through it yet, but my clients have, and it's coming, We all go through it at some point. But what is fascinating is that in the ancient cultures, menopause was thought of as the sacred initiation and it was looked forward to. It was like a caterpillar turning into a butterfly. Like the women that had already gone through that time, through menopause, were the natural leaders. And and the women that, still had their cycles were in training to become the leader. And it was fascinating that the symptoms that women have these days are all different when they're hitting menopause. They're all different according to what trauma needs to be released.
Mm.
Because because when a woman finishes menopause, apparently, according to the higher self. She is a divine goddess. So it's when she is going through menopause, it's what is in the way. What is the resistance to her becoming a goddess? So, like things like hot flashes are oftentimes suppressed, unhealed anger. And if you think about the heat, it like boils up and then it's just you have to deal with it and let it come through your body. Or, like anything, like any issue a woman gets during that time, it's sacred. It's like the operating system is going from one operating system to a fully different one. There is like a shedding of your old self, apparently, according to the higher self. So every person has a different symptom. And like even weight gain in the belly, which is common during that time. Apparently, it's like unmanifested creative desires because the womb is so much more powerful than people know. And it's been like hidden from us, like how powerful our wombs are. And
It's
so,
so interesting because the last guest on my podcast was Jerry Sargent. I don't know if you know him, Star Magic, founder of
yeah,
Star Magic. And he spoke about the power of the womb and how the womb is being used at this time, not just to process our own trauma, but the collective trauma. And I just wondered, as you're diving into these mysteries with your clients, and particularly that healing of the divine feminine, whether you feel that they are holding, the space not only for themselves, but for the collective and helping to process trauma on a much greater level.
oh, 100%, 100%. I feel like that is what the divine feminine does, basically. It holds this space. It does. It does all the work. It's like not all the work. I'm joking, but
So it's
it
amazing, really. So it potentially only takes a few of us in our power, a few of us women, or even men that are in touch with their divine feminine, to shift all the collective trauma quite quickly.
it's happening. It's happening right now, actually. I mean, there's so much going on. And, for a lot of people, women and men, they're feeling, a lot of stuff coming through them right now, actually. People are having highs and lows, and it's all part of this plan. It's like shedding that old stuff that doesn't serve us anymore and releasing things so that we can bring in all this new information and new wisdom and really connect with our higher selves.
It's incredible, an incredible time to be alive. I'd love to ask you, returning to the Templars hiding these incredible artifacts and treasures. It feels like they are meant to be rediscovered, not just through us, through the work you're doing, but actually in real life, kind of actually reclaiming the actual artifacts. And I know that you talked about how the Templars had mentioned, or someone had mentioned that then it's now underwater. It's under a body of water, under land, underwater. And I know that this is something that astrologer Pam Gregory has spoken about, how the land masses have changed and how at this time, because of Hermia, the goddess of the new earth, the land masses are changing again. And she believes that a lot of land masses that are underwater are going to rise up. And it just makes me
Yeah.
curious whether you feel that that will enable the rediscovering of these amazing kind of network of tunnels, really, that lead to these artifacts.
That's so fascinating. I have to check her out. I've heard about her because, yes, that's what I've been hearing. That's so funny.
Yeah, I'll put a
But
link
yes,
to her
yeah.
video, the podcast I did with her, underneath this video, because she talks, so there's an overlap, she talks about the land masses reappearing. So it's absolutely incredible. And she believes that there'll be very fertile lands that we will inhabit, that will be the new earth, literally. So
That's so funny. Yes. That's exactly what I've been hearing. And that is also in that symbol of the four corners because we move. There's going to be new land masses that will rise. So the right now it seems like there's a lot of shifting happening, and there will be some land masses do start to flood, but slowly. That's what I've been hearing. Slowly flooding and then some rising. I mean, of course, there's going to be some crazy weather events, and that's all part of the shifting. But when it's your time to leave, it's a divine time. So you can't do this wrong. It's not like you did something wrong if it's your time to leave, whatever. But there are many people that are receiving messages, and by listening to yourself, if it's not your time, they will be told to like go somewhere else. So, I mean, it's not really a time to fear. Like, there really isn't anything to fear because there really isn't any death or anything like that. But there are like shifts within the earth occurring and starting to occur, and they will occur. And some people do say under hypnosis that, like, even Atlantis and certain places that were part of Atlantis will rise again. And where the Templars hid the treasure, it does seem to be underwater because when my client even remembered where they hid the treasure, it was all one landmass. But all those lands have shifted, and we're continuously shifting. The land masses do shift.
it's so fascinating, isn't it? It really, it's an incredible stuff. And I think it really highlights the importance of listening to our inner guidance, and following our own timelines, and not buying into somebody else's timeline and somebody else's fear, because then we might inadvertently shift into somewhere that's, we need to keep in our own timeline.
Well, you can even just investigate your own life. Like you could investigate your life and look at how you're always in the right place at the right time, right? Always. And that is the way it is for the whole life that you live. So when it's your time, and there's nothing wrong with that. And in everything is so like orchestrated and planned, but responding to a lot of different things though. So, like I said, you can't do this life wrong, but in a sense, the way it looks like from a higher perspective is like this earth here has realms and layers. Like it's so vast. It's not just the fifth dimension that everyone talks about. I mean, there's like layers of dimensions, and they correspond to your vibration. So you can literally be in like a totally different reality as somebody and never see them, which is just very crazy to think. And as we keep splitting and shifting, there will be people you just never see anymore, and they're in a totally different reality. And as right now, everyone creates their own reality basically. Like every single person has that much control, believe it or not. They are creating their own reality based on their internal world and thoughts. It's like all our thoughts. So one person's reality of, even if you investigate like what happened with the whole COVID situation, everyone seemed to have a different take on it,
Yeah.
a different version, a different reality, so different than someone else's. And you can see that as an investigator. It doesn't mean you're doing anything wrong ever. It's because life is just a learning experience. But that's how it will be, and that's how it will continue to be.
I love the acceptance that you bring to that, because we can go into the 5Ds better and all that stuff. And actually, it all just is. It's all just our experience, our journey, and we're all on different journeys. So I love the acceptance and compassion to each person's journey that you're bringing.
Well, even like where we are now is so incredibly powerful and important. I mean, there's many souls that would love to be in this situation, to have lost everything to regain it. There's a certain type of bliss that the soul feels when it goes back to the in between to have lost things and to regain more. It's like an expansion of their soul, if that makes sense. So that is incredibly sought after, even to just want to experience this whole 3D reality is an incredibly amazing experience for a soul and for the growth of all, consciousness, because it's so dense here. So it's not like we have to try to like get somewhere. Basically, we just have to try to master ourselves. And if we master ourselves, we master everything.
That's incredible. That's such a beautiful conversation. I've really, really loved chatting with you, Sarah. Is there anything else that you'd like to share before we finish up today?
Well, basically, I feel like there really isn't anything to fear, and when we get stuck in fear, it's a great time to investigate your life and look back at your life and see how you never really had to worry that much about yesterday. But, if you want to get in touch with me, you can come to one of my workshops. I have trips around the world too, which are lots of fun. And I always do the sacred ceremonies at the sacred sites. I have two Egypt trips I take a year, and I'm going to do a return to Lemuria retreat in Hawaii. And I have a couple workshops coming up. One with Ann Tucker, she channels angels,
Oh,
and one of
amazing.
my amazing hypnosis subjects. My hypnosis subject that remembered working with the Knights Templar, Megan, that's not her real name, but Megan, she will be at the workshop in July with Ann Tucker. And you can, join us and find out more on my website, theholistichuhypnotist.com.
And I'll put your details underneath and also the details of your books as well so that people can check you up. It's been such a beautiful conversation and just so beautiful to connect with you as well, Sarah. Thank you so much for coming on today.
Thank you so much. It's been wonderful chatting with you too.
And thank you everyone for listening in. Lots of love. Bye for now.